Hard lessons to learn for a new junior doctor in Casualty.
Well done, Doctor. You've been here less than a week. You nearly succeeded in killing one of your first patients.
You've done this to me!
Think I'll pass for an SHO?
Yeah. Once you've been up all night.
Been drinking. Vicky, you shouldn't be up!
Welcome to Holby.
A new series of Casualty beginning next Saturday at 8 on BBC1.
Prepare to be entertained by the new Sunday night lineup on BBC1.
That's better, dear. And as it's your special day, you can kiss me on the other cheek this morning.
Life's a little more romantic for the ELIOTT sisters at 7:45.
We are going to Paris.
You throw away everything you've built up.
Jack, you must understand, my work comes first.
Yes. Are you sure it's work?
At 8:40, booming business is worrying the Stir-Craze sisters too.
You know, all this success of yours has forced me to take a long, hard look at my own life.
Oh dear, run out of Valium again, have we?
Medication remains the issue at 9:25 in the surreal world of Dr. Dacre.
I can usually supply people with drugs any amount you need.
What do you want?
You know what I want.
She's my wife today,
Drama, both intriguing and comic, but it's all entertainment for Sundays on One.
Extended highlights of the games between Tottenham and Everton and Norwich versus Southampton in Match of the Day. And that's after the news and sport now on BBC1 at 9:40.
Germany promises not to raise interest rates, but she won't cut them either. EC finance ministers say their determination to avoid any realignment of currencies is as strong as ever. And the relatives of the teenager shot dead in Belfast yesterday are in court to see two soldiers charged with his murder. Good evening. For the first time in decades, Germany has promised not to raise interest rates, at least for the time being. But her refusal to lower them provoked what the Dutch called a colossal row between the Germans and the rest of their EC partners at the finance ministers' meeting in Bath. The German minister insisted that lower interest rates had to be earned, not ordained, and he was not prepared to be put into the dock. But they were unanimous in promising to continue to intervene in the turbulent foreign exchange markets whenever necessary to counter tensions. And they ruled out that any realignment of EC currency should take place, even if the French vote no in their referendum on the Maastricht Treaty.
Isn't working.
Anti-European demonstrators making their feelings known outside the conference hotel, demanding the finance ministers change their current policies. Posing for a family photo, the ministers ignored the protests, but they know the exchange rate mechanism is blamed by critics for keeping interest rates high in Britain and across Europe, to match those in Germany. Arriving at the talks, the Germans came under pressure to boost growth in the EC by cutting their rates.
Also ich bin eigentlich nicht bereit, weder in Deutschland noch sonst wo.
Germany's finance minister says he won't be put in the dock over interest rates. Theo Weigel insisting his country has done much to help Europe over the past 2 years. But the German Bundesbank president Helmut Schlesinger did make an unprecedented policy statement, saying the bank won't increase rates in the present circumstances, accepting they're causing problems.
We are up till now the key currency in the EMS, and insofar what we are doing, it's important for the others, and it is not always fitting into the situation in other countries.
At a news conference, the Chancellor of the Exchequer said the Bundesbank announcement was designed to reassure the nervous currency markets. Norman Lamont also reiterating there could be no devaluation of weaker ERM currencies, saying if necessary, British interest rates would be raised to defend the pound.
We've made it clear again and again that we're going to do whatever is necessary to maintain our position. If it was necessary to do something unpalatable, we wouldn't shirk from it.
In Bath, the EC ministers have tried hard to put on a confident facade, but behind it there is concern the community is heading for still slower economic growth. Tonight, the ministers hope to calm the markets, but their words may not be enough. The volatility is likely to continue, at least until after the French referendum result is known in 2 weeks' time.
The Shadow Chancellor, Gordon Brown, said that the meeting was a missed opportunity and the latest failure in Britain's presidency of the EC. A senior Conservative backbencher said the Germans were driving Europe into deeper recession. Our political correspondent John Pienaar reports.
John Major, watching today's cricket final at Lord's, was being derided by Labour as a spectator in the debate about Europe's future, as the government's critics tried to exploit the uncertainty over the Maastricht Treaty and the mood of economic gloom. Labour leaders, rather stung by criticism of their low profile during the parliamentary recess, went on to the offensive.
The Chancellor has achieved nothing for Britain and nothing for Europe, a wasted opportunity that represents yet another failure of leadership in Europe on the Prime Minister and the Chancellor's part. Pressure on the Bundesbank should have been accompanied by proposing joint investment and employment measures to expand the European economies, and Britain should be taking the lead by attacking the recession and unemployment here.
The uncertainty in the foreign exchanges has been a spur to Euroscepticism among Tory MPs, with some backbenchers sticking for the moment to the government line, but worried about the ERM, high German interest rates and the relative strength of the Deutschmark.
It's clear that Germany is going to continue to drive the rest of Western Europe into deeper and deeper recession. I think this will have some very serious effects throughout Europe, and I think there'll be an upsurge of feeling against the Maastricht Agreement.
Downing Street's already made it clear that a French no vote would kill off Britain's attempts to ratify Maastricht. A yes vote would enable John Major to take on the Euro rebels, starting at the Tory conference next month. But the depth of the recession and ministers' inability to bring down interest rates could make that task all the harder.
2 Scots Guardsmen have appeared before a court in Belfast charged with murdering 18-year-old Peter McBride in the city yesterday. Mark Douglas Wright and James Fisher were remanded on bail into military custody.
Peter McBride's father, his sister Kelly and girlfriend Patricia Devine were all at the 10-minute hearing at Belfast Magistrates Court this morning. The family had called yesterday for the soldiers involved in the shooting to be prosecuted. Guardsmen Mark Douglas Wright, aged 19, and James Fisher, aged 24, both of the Scots Guards, were charged with the murder of Peter McBride yesterday. He was shot dead in the Catholic New Lodge area of North Belfast as he ran from an army foot patrol which had stopped and questioned him. In court today, a Detective Chief Inspector said Guardsman Wright replied no, sir, when charged, and Guardsman Fisher said no. As soon as the 2 soldiers appeared in the dock, Peter McBride's father shouted bastards and scumbags at them. His sister and girlfriend wept openly. The magistrate, Mr. Ian Bamford, said this was a sensitive occasion and he proposed to deal with it with understanding, but he wanted to proceed without interruption. Then, after the soldiers' commanding officer had said they would be kept in a secure guard room under 24-hour armed guard, they were remanded on bail into military custody. There were no further interruptions in court, but as Peter McBride's family left after the hearing, his sister and Patricia Devine, the mother of his 2 children, were still clearly distressed.
A man was shot dead this evening while visiting relatives in a Loyalist area of Belfast. No group has admitted the killing, but there's speculation in Loyalist quarters that the murder may have been linked to a dispute within one of the Loyalist terrorist groups. The dead man has been named as Samuel Jeffrey Rice of Newtonards in County Down. The former Yugoslav republics and the leading aid agencies have been asked to attend urgent talks in Geneva on Monday to try to find a way of restarting the airlift to Bosnia. Flights were stopped after an Italian relief plane crashed 2 days ago. The meeting has been called by the International Conference on the Balkans.
The crash investigation team, led by an Italian general, spent most of the day at the site. The manner of the plane's disappearance and local eyewitnesses have led the Italian government to suspect it was not an accident. The general did not commit himself, but he dwelt on the possibility of a missile attack.
Investigation should be made to find out which faction could have this kind of missile, because if there is a missile, it should be an infrared, a man-portable infrared.
As the bodies of the 4 crewmen were taken on board, General Battisti also stressed the need to find a safe land corridor. For the UN has said today that fighter escorts for future flights are not planned. For the moment, the entire aid operation is under strain, with all relief supply flights suspended. And what has reached here is being criticized. Huge amounts of flour and rice when tinned meat and fish and vegetables are needed. Even then, cooking is primitive. Electricity and gas supplies are virtually non-existent, and the kitchen has moved to the pavement, despite shelling. What fuel there is disappears quickly. The hospitals have told us that they urgently need more protein to sustain their patients. who also lie in wards open to the elements. Window panes in Sarajevo are mostly to be found in heaps on the street. This morning's storm emphasized the misery of living in a city where buildings are wrecked and without any heating. There seemed only one benefit from the clouds of an early autumn. The hillside gun positions were relatively quiet. Kate Adey, BBC News, Sarajevo.
The United Nations Secretary-General says the world expects too much from the organization. Speaking during a visit to Moscow, Dr. Boutros Ghali said the UN faced a crisis of too much credibility. Countries believed it could solve all problems. He warned that the organization was facing a financial crisis, with member countries owing it nearly $2,000 million in contributions. The former German Chancellor, Helmut Schmidt, has said the Germans are a people in danger as neo-Nazi violence broke out again in a dozen towns last night. In Eisenhüttenstadt, youths attacked a refugee reception centre. Nearby, in Lubbenau, they clashed with police guarding a hostel. And in Greifswald, an empty children's home being prepared for refugees was burnt down.
This was an attack typical of the night, violent, short-lived, mounted by no more than 50 frustrated youths fortified by drink. At Eisenhüttenstadt, their petrol bomb was ineffective against a far larger force of police, reinforced to deal with an expected outbreak of weekend violence. The police used water cannon to put out the flames, charging into the mob, making snatch arrests and successfully breaking up any more concerted attack. But at one hostel for Vietnamese refugees, a room was burnt out, although no one was injured. Germany's President Richard von Weizsäcker shares the dismay over the approach of Chancellor Kohl and the political establishment. Today, President von Weizsäcker toured some of the areas worst affected by violence, meeting migrants fearful for their future, some of them forced to flee the mobs when their hostel was destroyed in some of the fiercest attacks of the past 3 weeks.
The people in Germany, in the vast majority, are absolutely open for Holocaust. But at the same time, especially in the so-called new Bundesländer here in East Germany, people have themselves great difficulties to solve.
The police are being left to take the lead today surrounding this beer hall in a small town in eastern Germany. The police successfully prevented any gathering of the far-right German People's Union. Their planned meeting here today banned by the authorities. Although the police do now seem to be having increasing success in containing the violence, it hasn't stopped the criticism of the government, most notably from former Chancellor Helmut Schmidt, who says Germany is in effect leaderless and in a rotten state. James Robbins, BBC News, Königs Wusterhausen.
The leader of South Africa's Inkatha movement, Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi, has called on the party's youth to confront the ANC and stop it in its tracks. Chief Buthelezi said otherwise the ANC would destroy them and the future. His remarks followed the killing of 8 young Inkatha members yesterday. Earlier, the ANC replied to accusations by the South African government that it was holding up the resumption of peace talks. ANC leaders said stumbling blocks remained on key issues such as the release of political prisoners. Another holiday company has collapsed, the second in 24 hours. Impact Holidays, based in Carlisle, has stopped trading with a loss of 70 jobs. 2,000 of its holidaymakers, now abroad, won't be stranded because the firm is a member of ABTA. Another 2,000 due to leave later this month will be offered a refund.
The holiday industry is a notoriously precarious one. This year, public demand has been lower than anticipated due to the recession, and as the bigger firms have cut prices to attract more customers, the smaller ones have been squeezed out. The news of the demise of Impact Holidays comes just 24 hours after tour operators DHG Limited, specialising in package holidays to Turkey, announced it was going into liquidation. Although ABTA says 30 affiliated holiday companies have collapsed so far in 1992, this time last year over 50 firms had ceased trading.
Sadly, there have been a number of companies that have gone out of business recently, but they're a very small minority of the total number of tour operators. And I think probably there have been fewer companies that have gone out of business in the travel sector than in almost every other sector which is serving the consumer.
The collapse of the Bath-based coach operators Land Travel back in July highlighted the fact that holiday makers are taking a huge risk booking with firms that aren't insured or bonded to ABTA. In this case, thousands of people were told they wouldn't get their money back. One customer vented his anger on Land Travel's chairman at a creditors' meeting. As the holiday season draws to an end, more and more companies will be cutting prices to attract customers, a price war that will see more holiday firms experiencing difficulties.
The Prince of Wales has had a minor operation on his knee, Buckingham Palace said tonight. Prince Charles spent several hours in hospital where surgeons removed part of a cartilage damaged last month.
2 years ago, the Prince of Wales needed treatment for a badly broken arm. Last year, he suffered back problems, and today he returned to hospital as the result of a twisted knee, which was sufficiently painful for surgeons to decide to remove part of a damaged cartilage. The operation was carried out this morning under general anaesthetic at the Queen's Medical Centre in Nottingham, the hospital where the Prince had treatment for his injured arm. This afternoon, he was able to return to Highgrove, where he's spending the weekend with the Princess of Wales and their 2 sons. The palace say he'll go ahead with a planned engagement in London tomorrow night. Later in the week, he's due to return to the hospital with the Princess on an official visit planned some time ago. It'll be their first appearance together since the recent media speculation about the state of their marriage.
It was the last major cricket match of the season today. With the details and the rest of the sport, Rob Bonnet.
Northamptonshire have won their first NatWest Trophy final in 4 attempts. As expected, they beat Leicestershire at Lords by a comfortable margin. Their 8-wicket victory came with more than 10 overs to spare.
For the first time ever, a 60-over Lords final wasn't a sellout, a reflection on the depth of the recession and ticket pricing that was over-ambitious, a term aptly descriptive of the attempted run which cost Leicestershire their first wicket. Boone run out for 3, an early blow from which his side never fully recovered. James Whittaker, though never fluent, at least put the innings back on a sound footing, and with Phil Robinson compiled a 130-run stand that seemed to have built a promising platform. But once Whittaker had holed out for 84, the rest of the batting failed to raise the tempo, and a target of 209 never looked likely to extend a talented Northants batting lineup. Particularly with Alan Fordham showing his promise by assuming complete early command. His one mistake on 20 went unpunished, Benson's spilled catch effectively settling the issue in advance. Fordham needed no further invitation to set about a moderate Leicestershire attack and had put on 144 with Bailey when he eventually went for 91. But by then, the result was a formality, which Alan Lamb confirmed in typically forthright manner. In the end, it fell to Bailey to secure victory by the considerable margin of 8 wickets with 10 overs to spare. For all but Northamptonshire supporters, it won't go down as one of the more memorable finals.
England football manager Graham Taylor will have taken some encouragement from today's outstanding performances in the Premier League. Just 4 days before England's match in Spain, their first since the disappointing European Championship finals, his striker Alan Shearer scored twice for Blackburn as they beat Nottingham Forest. There were also 2 goals for fellow squad member David White as Manchester City won at Sheffield Wednesday. And Ian Wright scored twice for Arsenal in their defeat at Wimbledon, despite an injury that forced him to withdraw from the England party. Meanwhile, Norwich still lead the Premier League by 1 point. Their game with Southampton can be seen shortly in Match of the Day. Coventry won 1-0 at Oldham. Queen's Park Rangers drew 0-0 with Ipswich. In Barclays League Division 1, Wolverhampton Wanderers continued their good start with an early goal today against visitors Peterborough. It came from Steve Bull, forgotten perhaps by England, but not by the Molineux fans. Wolves eventually won 4-3 after building a 4-1 lead. This, their last goal, a second from Andy Mutch. It took them up to third, but Charlton still lead after winning 2-0 at Sunderland. Newcastle is second. They won 2-1 at Bristol Rovers. Birmingham and Swindon both lost. And at Notts County, more back-pass law confusion. Goalkeeper Catlin couldn't handle the ball, and his feeble kick gave Barnsley's Little his team's second goal in a 3-1 win. Now golf. Scotland's Colin Montgomery is 6 shots clear of the field in the European Masters tournament in Switzerland. Montgomery collected 4 birdies in 6 holes before having to abandon his 3rd round at the 15th because of failing light. He'll complete the remaining 3 holes tomorrow morning. The most valuable sprint of the flat race season, the Haydock Park Sprint Cup, has been won by Sheikh Al Badou, ridden by Bruce Raymond. Entering the final furlong, co-favourite Mr Brooks, ridden by Lester Piggott, put in a strong challenge, but Sheikh Al Badou's superior acceleration won the day.
From Mr. Brooks as they race up towards the line. Sheikh Al-Badou from Mr. Brooks, and Sheikh Al-Badou's going to run it well at the line. Sheikh Al-Badou's the winner, and Mr. Brooks is second.
The steward's inquiry followed because Sheikh Al-Badou had drifted offline, but the placings were left unchanged.
That's the BBC News Tonight. From Rob and me, good night.